Hey everyone, this is Kandace and Sher with Processing Trauma Out Loud. Last week, Sher and I started a two-part series on the concept of nature and beauty and art. And last week, we really talked more about nature and her experiences of being in nature and mind and what that has meant for our continued healing journey. And today, Sher and I are going to be talking a little bit more about art or creating artful things, if you will. I don't know how to say that, Share that actually bring in beauty. Especially Share, you and I were talking about me being in a place where the winter is hard. And what are some of the things, even in the home that I'm going to be in, that will bring a sense of beauty? I also want to mention before we get too far into this, I was telling Cher that part of our healing or my healing, and I believe this is true for a lot of people, is in the beginning, it's about finding this space to slow down, to create, to notice beauty. And at the same time, that can actually spike our anxiety for a while. So Cher asked me, like, what was that for you? So when you had to slow down to heal, I realized like the conclusion we came to is my fast pace of life has served to numb pain.
Yeah.
And so now that I have healed more and significantly in many ways, the slowness doesn't feel like it used to.
Yeah, and I think this fast pace of life is it's a trap that I don't want to say a trap. I'll say it's a way of survival. It's a means of coping with the pain that we carry or the struggles that just can seem really overwhelming. And maybe that's anxiety in our body or depression, especially with the winter. I think a lot of people in the northern countries in particular, we don't get sunshine, we are lower in vitamin D, and all of these things have a big effect. And so, but busyness and this really fast pace of life that as Americans we tend to do, it can numb us the way that a drug or alcohol can numb the pain. And so I love your awareness of that. And I think that's what we're really inviting people into when we're talking about nature and beauty and art is in order to take in the expansiveness and the grandeur and the awe, we have to slow down or we will miss it.
Mhm. We have to slow down. And I don't want anyone to hear that we are against being productive.
Yeah.
Because there is a place, right, for getting things done to be productive, our work and whatever that looks like for us. But what Cher and I are talking about is more of checking in with yourself and seeing if this drivenness that you have, that I have had to stay busy in order to numb.
Yeah.
And when we get out of that, and I'm going to call it a pattern, when we get out of that, I know for me, the world has opened up in a way that, well, you used this word last week, expansive. When I was so in myself and in my internal world because there was so much unhealed pain,
Yeah.
I literally was distracted from seeing the beauty of creation and art.
Yeah. Yeah. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about art, which in a sense is bringing or creating representations of what we find, well, for the most part, what we find beautiful in nature. I mean, it might be a flower or a landscape or, a bouquet of grasses or a leaf or whatever. But we just spent a few minutes talking about some of the simple things that we have surrounding us that we have intentionally placed in our world, or your daughter where you are right now has invited you into these spaces of art And we want to really offer some of these things to our listeners because it doesn't have to be sitting down and spending 12 hours creating something with your glue gun. Like
Thank God.
I don't know, like I'm kind of afraid of glue guns, I think. Um but or painting, painting a beautiful landscape that takes, hours. It can be that. And if you find great joy in that, like of course we bless that, and it's ways that you bring beauty to others too. But what are some of the simple things, Candace? You talked about a couple things that are right there at your fingertips that you're experiencing that just help you to pause and slow down and recognize, like, yeah, there's beauty and awe around you.
Mhm. I'll just name a few because my idea of art is the same as yours. It doesn't have to be paint or, but I think of a bug. Okay, so we were at the park the other day, my daughter and my grandson and I, and there's some amazing little creatures out there.
Yep.
And anyway, I look over and Bailey had this daddy long leg crawling on her hand. And Arlo looked over and saw it and put his hand up, and the daddy long leg crawled out of her, and just Arlo just watched that daddy long leg crawl over his hand, and he was in awe of it,
Yeah.
you know. And that's a form of art to me because it's a creation. It's a
Yeah.
bug. So, but a couple other things is my daughter has just these little strings of art hanging up over things that Arlo made. Some of it's paint, some of it's he just took some paper and tore it up and then used the pieces to make an abstract piece of art. But one of my favorite things is, and I was telling you about this just on Bailey's table. Oh, you know what? If you all want to see this, you're going to have to come to the YouTube video because I'm going to turn my screen over. This is just a simple little piece of wood that Bailey has a candle, some salt, and a little vase on. And every night at dinner, she lights that candle. Sure, that feels like a piece of creation and a piece of art to my soul as we're eating dinner and I'm noticing the candle and the flame and I'm noticing that I'm going slow and I'm fully present and I'm just taking in the beauty of family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And there's something about a candle too, right? That it's so representational of course, light and life in that dancing flame and love. Like candle light is kind of symbolic of, and I really love how just that one simple candle just draws your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Cher? What are some of the simple little things that
Yeah.
or big, you get to decide, but I'm curious about what you're going to share with
Well,
our listeners.
some things that I mentioned as we like, if as I look around my office, I have a painting across of seven children playing crack the whip. I
Mm.
have had that painting for years, and it just calls forth like playfulness, and it's like it's a 1920s kind of look, of boys with their suspenders and their little caps, and anyway, so that, and then I have this geode again. If our listeners are going to have to go to YouTube to see, but and I was just telling you how a geode, the outside just looks like a plain old rock, but when it's cracked open, we find this crystal that is beautiful, and it always was there and always was that, but until something happened that cracked it open, the geode was hidden. But I keep that on my desk, and I look at it a lot. It's something that I set up kind of as an Ebenezer, a reminder of the ways that I have been set free from shame. And it's a piece of beauty that's here, and that just draws my heart into expansiveness like we're talking about.
I want to just say about that geode. There's this saying. It's up on my mirror, and I can't remember all of it, but it says something like, "There are many things in this world that will crack you open, but the world needs you cracked open."
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Mm,
so true. Yeah. Yeah, and I think just art is it draws our hearts
mhm.
into I just said these three words, but I'll say them again: light and life and love. And I think that I don't know if you've ever heard about these people who will go to a museum, an art museum, and who will sit on a bench and literally like stare at a painting for hours. And it's I have found myself do that a few times with a piece of art where I just step back about 5 or 6 feet and I just pause and I will just look and allow my eyes to wander over what's there and then also kind of respond to something that seems to call me in more. And I think that art, whether that's a painting or a sculpture or, like I said, a vase full of grasses or a candle, it's a relational kind of dynamic that we have with something that's representational of something much bigger that calls. It's kind of one of those deep calling to deep kind of things that we can have an experience of when we encounter art that really moves us.
Yeah. It's been probably at least 10 years ago, but it's when we had a retreat home next to our house, and I started doing these retreats called the Quieted Heart Day Retreat.
Mm,
I think I did 3 or 4 of them, but I only took 10 people, and I think each one of them was we filled up. But one of the things that we did was, because I'm sharing this with you because you said connecting to our heart,
yeah.
right? And so I'm thinking of this idea of heart-centered living, where
Mm,
we can not just live in our brains,
yep.
not just live in our body, but bring our heart into it, which
Mm,
is really where we're going to experience the joy, you know? But it was this image that we meditated on for, I think I had 15 or 20 minutes that I printed one out and each person had one. We meditated on that drawing and then we journaled it, and then whoever wanted could share what came up for them. But the image was Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane,
mm,
and it had him praying, and it had his three friends sleeping.
yeah.
And I am telling you, it was the most powerful thing that we did in this, I think, a 6-hour day retreat that we did.
Yeah.
It always opened people's hearts up to
Mm,
what went on for them when they meditated on that image. I think that's what you're talking about.
yeah. Yeah. Yes. And just causing you provided a space where people could slow down, look, feel, maybe remember something. It allows, when we pause, it allows our imagination to get involved. And yeah, and in a picture like that, where do I find myself? Am I sleeping next to the disciples, or am I tarrying with Jesus, or how would I see? So our imagination can get involved too, and I think with art, it does invite us into igniting our imagination.
I'm thinking of, it probably was actually 15 years ago. I'm thinking about this season of my life. I had gone to a Henry Nouwen retreat, which I had read. He writes a lot on silence and solitude, and I will say that that season of my life, I was getting more connected to that concept of what it means to slow down and to find peace and silence and solitude. And I can look back on that and say, how in the heck, like, why didn't that continue? Well, I also had a lot of unhealed trauma
Yeah.
and a lot of wounds that had just been spiritually bypassed.
Yeah.
And so but I got a taste and I got a glimpse of what I was being called into. And now with these deeper wounds being healed, I'm re-experiencing this at a whole nother level.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about nature and art is wherever we are, we're invited in.
Hmm.
And it's very gentle. In one sense, it's very gentle with us, and in another sense, it can be very, huge and scary and even dangerous. There's risk, especially when we encounter nature. Um,
What tell me some of the like I am curious though, because we talked about some risk in nature last week. What would your idea of risk be when you open your heart to take in art?
Yeah, I was just actually that just as I was talking, that thought kind of flashed before my eyes too, and I'm thinking, this is just really off the cuff, And if I have more time to think about it, I might come up with a different answer. But I think sometimes we're caught off guard or unaware, like we enter art without knowing that we're going to encounter something that's going to grasp a hold of us. That might be us creating art. Like last week I wrote a poem that really has just gripped my heart. I've come back to it every day. I'm pondering it. It's doing something very powerful in me that I didn't see it coming. I didn't even set out to write a poem. It's like it was just there. And I wrote it. And then I was, my tendency what was like, okay, now I'm going to refine it. And a friend of mine said, "Don't refine it. Take it in its raw form. Just stay with it in its raw form for a while." And I have. And it's like so dangerous in the sense of it's doing some work in me that's changing some things in me that I didn't see coming. And I don't think it's not dangerous in the sense of harm, but it's dangerous in the sense of yeah, some things are shaking that are
I'm gonna
going
say
to
that's exactly the word that came up for me. It's almost it's an emotional, heart-centered shaking.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, uh, we could do an episode 3 if you come back to me and say, I would like to read my poem. I've heard your poem and it's very moving. I think I've
Yeah.
heard this poem. I feel like you've
Mhm.
written a few of them. Is this the
I
one you
the one I read for the pearls, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and no pressure, no demand, but it's really a beautiful poem, Cher. And it
Yeah,
may
I
be, it
could
may just be for you and a few of your close friends, but yeah.
all right, I will ponder. So our listeners, we will say next week you might hear my poem and we reserve the right to flex.
Yes. Well, bless Cher's heart, she has to live with my ideas and suggestions a lot, but she also knows that she can say no and I will respect it.
It's in a way it's like you're one of the ways that you invite me into the deep water, right? Like I it's like you say, "Okay, share, swim." You don't have to have your feet on the ground like, "Swim, girl, swim." And then but also I know that I can retreat if I feel, and that's a beautiful dynamic in our relationship. So,
Yeah, go back and listen to our first episode in this series because I didn't say much about this, and this might confuse our listeners, so you're going to have to go back. But when Lulu said to you, "It's okay, share," we can go back.
yeah,
Oh my gosh, I just felt like yes, this is the space of people knowing us, knowing our stories, honoring
yeah,
what we need. Lulu may have thought, "Oh, Cher can just keep going," but no, she really she pushed you a little bit in the beginning,
yeah,
and then she knew when it was time to say, "Oh, I don't want Cher to go into a lot of fear."
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now you have to go back and listen because it's a really cool story.
Yeah, it was it
So good to be with you around this topic.
you too, friend. So good.
Okay. Love
Love
you.
you lot. Yep, love you lots.